Hello everyone. So here I will be providing a commentary for a clip from Peter Brook's presentation of the Mahabharata in a film adapted from a play. Now this is a play, this is part one of the play that is available on YouTube. Just type in Peter Brook Mahabharata part one and then part two. This is a play slash film that I've watched many times. The essence of the Mahabharata, I feel, is very much captured in this film, which is in English, which is available to all you English speakers, and as well as myself, because I speak only English. But Peter Brook really captures all of the deepest elements of the Mahabharata without providing the glamorous and the very showy side that is often captured in other plays and movies. Now, he also had quite a few consultants, Sanskrit consultants and Hindu consultants, to allow his movie to have real significance to Hindus. And this is one of the reasons why there's such deep meaning in so many parts of this movie, so many parts of this film. And I would highly recommend that you watch it. But I'm going to be narrowing down for this video to a particular point in the Mahabharata when the Pandavas are exiled to the forest and they have to hide from Duryodhana, directly after this scene, and they're asking Dharma himself how they can hide after Yudhistira, the eldest Pandava, answers all the questions that Dharma, his father, has to ask. Now, all his other brothers who try to drink from this pond or this lake, the lake, which was really Dharma, asked them to answer the questions before they drank, and they did not. So one brother after another, and all these Pandava brothers can be associated with different parts of the spine as well, different chakras. Chakras are the projections from the spine. Now, each brother chose to try and drink before he answered the questions, but Yudhishthira, being the most virtuous, being the most kingly in nature, chose to answer the questions before he drank, and this is the clip that I'm about to show you. These were princes that were in rags and had to be in exile because of a lost dice game to corrupt King Duryodhana, and they came back eventually to take the kingdom back in the name of Dharma. And because they are, in my opinion and most people's opinion, the rightful rulers at the time, but also, more importantly, the just rulers, the ones who would actually not care about themselves, but care about their people. But regardless, we're narrowing it down to this one scene where Dharma is asking Yudhishthira these questions, these very intrinsic cosmic questions that we all must ask ourselves. So without further ado, I'll play the clip and then we'll discuss.
He's struggling down. I see no trace of blows. I don't understand.
First, answer my questions. Then I'll let you drink.
Who are you? I don't see you.
Answer.
I'm in the air. I'm in the water.
I am neither fish nor bird. I struck down your brothers because they wanted to drink without answering my questions.
Examine me.
What is quicker than the wind?
Thought.
What can cover the earth?
Darkness.
Who are more numerous, the living or the dead?
The living, because the dead are no longer.
Give me an example of space.
My two hands. As one.
An example of grief,
Ignorance.
of poison.
Desire.
An example of defeat.
Victory.
Which came first, day or night?
Day, but it was only a day ahead.
What is the cause of the world?
Love.
What is your opposite?
Myself.
What is madness?
A forgotten way.
And revolt? Why do men revolt?
To find beauty. Either in life or in death.
And what for each of us is inevitable?
Happiness.
And what is the greatest wonder?
Each day death strikes, and we live as though we were immortal. This is the greatest wonder.
Then the voice from the lake said, "May all your brothers come back to life."
Who are you?
I am Dharma, your father. I am constancy, rightness, the order of the world.
You've taken the form of a lake.
I am all forms. Yudhistira, I am very satisfied. Choose a favor.
Our stay in the woods is coming to an end. We must now spend a 13th year unseen, unrecognized. Tell me what our disguise should be.
Choose the disguise of your most secret desire.
Where can we hide?
For the 13th year, you must hide so skillfully that no one could recognize you, not even me. Now you can drink.
All right, everyone, so let's go through these questions. Now, some of them are self-explanatory. Yudhishthira's answers are on point and very blunt because they are self-explanatory, but some of these require further explanation. Now, the first question is that Dharma asks Yudhishthira, the eldest Pandava, what is quicker than the wind? Thought. Thought is very quick. It can happen in a millisecond. We as human beings are endowed with the privilege to have a brain developed enough in order to understand our environment and the question that we pose, our consciousness, based on our environment. The self asks the consciousness and have an answer very quickly without too much contemplation, should we come from a place of calmness, of silence, and of true contemplation. Now the second one, what can cover the earth? Darkness. That seems very literal, and it really is. If there's no light in the world, if there's not a single person with a shred of virtue, darkness will easily cover the world because there is a lack of light. Not because darkness is something in and of itself, but because there is a lack of light. Without even a tiny beam projected out into the world, but darkness always parts from pure light. Who are more numerous, the living or the dead? And Yudhishthira responds, the living, because the dead are no longer. Now, this may seem obvious at face value, but it isn't. Now, many ghosts or spirits left in this world who have unresolved issues and they feel attached to this world are left here because they are egos split off from an adjoined soul. The soul that they used to be aligned with, they used to be in a single body with, in a way. The souls have moved on because a soul cannot be contained like a ghost, like a spirit that is attached to material and associations with people or other things in this world and feels it must remain behind. The ego is what creates ghosts and spirits and is what remains behind. So the dead cannot be truly numbered as the dead that we experience in this world, as long as it's not a cross-dimensional communication, are the egos that are left behind. Moving on. And this is just my opinion. This isn't something I'm getting from somebody else. This is my interpretation based on what I've studied, based on what I've experienced. So the next question is, give me an example of space. And Yudhistira says, my two hands as one. Now, a single point in space, there are a seemingly infinite number of points in space. Wherever there is awareness, there is a point in space. Now, this point of space can be far more intense in magnitude, depending on the awareness of where that point chooses to be. And for a point to choose to be, it has to be attached to something that can choose to be there. Now, a single point of space for a rock, let's say. A rock has a certain amount of consciousness, just because consciousness is behind everything. But a rock would have a dimmer point, but it would still be a point in space. Now, when we put our hands together, we're acknowledging our point in space. This is why when you pray, you should have your hands together and not clasped like this, but together. Because you're identifying yourself as being in the moment at this point and being in communication with the grander whole or the Godhead. Now, an example of grief, ignorance. Ignorance is the ultimate grief, because ignorance is a mourning. Our soul mourns when the ego has chosen ignorance, and the soul is in grief because the soul always knows that truth is other than ignorance, and it always knows where the light is. But the ego, and depending on our attunement with our soul, if we can't hear our soul at all, then the ego has complete control. But most of the time, the ego has only partial control. Now, the ego having the mainstay in control and choosing ignorance would cause the soul great grief. This is my interpretation once again. Now, moving on to the question number 6, an example of poison, desire. Now, Paramahansa Yogananda said, in a book that I read by Self-Realization Fellowship or Swami Kriyananda, I can't remember, one of the two. Paramahansa Yogananda said that, at first desire feels like nectar, but after a while feels like poison. It becomes something you become attached to, something that spreads and becomes more desires. And eventually it poisons your existence because you become reliant upon the satisfaction of the desires that only keep growing and only keep, even for a single desire, only keep growing in the intensity that it desires to be fed. But he also said that at first virtue feels like poison, but eventually it becomes like nectar. At first, keeping to certain virtues like not drinking, not smoking, not being jealous, not being envious, always being kind, not showing hate, not being angry, not being hateful. At first, these virtues will feel like poison because you feel like really constrained and like you just can't be the person that it feels like most of the people are being, that your instincts are telling you to be, your animal instincts. But after a while, it becomes apparent that these virtues are benefiting you in a wondrous way, and you're becoming more than just a person led by their animal desires and animal instincts. Now, an example of defeat, victory. This is an allusion to the Pandavas winning the war, later on, spoiler alert, but and the fact that only Yudhishthira really remained virtuous till the end, because all the other Pandavas fell to certain sins, certain corruptions, whether it be Arjuna's envy, Bhima's gluttony, Sahadeva's kind of pride in a way, lack of humility, Nakula's really feeling like his beauty was important and this made him better. I might be switching two of the brothers there, but anyway, you get the idea. Now, when we are victorious in this world, it doesn't always mean that we're victorious in the astral, in the world beyond. A lot of time when we achieve a victory here, it is a victory of this world and not of the world beyond, not in a higher reality. That's something we must keep in mind. 8, which came first, day or night? Now, and then Yudhishthira, of course, says day, but it was only a day ahead, because it's an impossible question. It doesn't make complete sense, because this question is asked in multiple philosophies, and the answer is always an obvious and poignant one, because the question doesn't make sense. But he says, day, but it was only a day ahead. There was light first, but when the light went through its cycle, there was darkness. That's another way to look at it. And when we think of it at a cosmic level, there's always this back and forth cycle, this yin and this yang. But there's a lot more I can talk about with that. But moving on, I don't want to take up too much time. What is the cause of the world? Love. That is a wondrous answer. God wanted to experience himself, so he became everything. There is Godhead. There is a consciousness at the head of beyond creation. But God became multiple parts and divided himself into pieces, different souls, and different projections that created different projections from those souls that created creation. God became everything, but he did this in order to experience himself, because God ultimately loves himself, and we love ourselves because we're part of God. At least our souls love ourselves. But then when we are introduced to Maya illusion and the projections that our souls send out based on their progress and really creating creation in a way all the time, it's a projection. We get blind to this feeling of universal love, this universal self loving itself. We become blind to that because of Maya, because of illusion, because of these projections based on our soul's spiritual evolution. So we have to learn to know that we are a part of God, and that God loves himself. Thus, we love ourselves. But that might seem simple, and a lot of people might think with their ego that, okay, I'm great, and then they might like themselves more than other people, but they're missing the point. You love other people as much as yourself, and love equally, love greatly. Anyway, moving on. What is your opposite, myself? Now, when he says myself, I think he's using the small s, the small self, which means he's talking from a point of soul. His soul is basically saying myself, as in the opposite of me, the soul, is the ego, which is the small s self. The small s self and the big S self is the soul, the small s self is the ego. Now, of course, Yudhistira was always very well attuned to his soul. The only problem he had was with gambling and caused a lot of trouble. But anyway, moving on. What is madness, a forgotten way? Madness can be described as forgetting the path that you've chosen or the path that you found, and becoming blind because you see something off of the path and you start following it. You become lost in the forest that surrounds the way, surrounds the clear path. And it can also be described as not only getting lost in a forest, the wilderness around the path, or the path that you've chosen, or one of the many paths that lead to God. It can also be described as going backwards on the path and thinking you're going forward because you forgot the original destination. This is madness, and this is very metaphorical, as you can probably tell. Now, why do men revolt? And Yudhishthira says, to find beauty, either in life or in death. This means that we attach ourselves to, when we revolt, we're attaching ourselves to an idea that's greater than ourselves. We find beauty, the realization of beauty, the realization and bringing that beauty into this world by bringing about a revolution that creates that beauty, or by dying for the hope and that dream of that beauty that we want to bring into this world. Okay, moving on. Now this is the second to last question. What for each of us is inevitable? Yudhishthira says happiness. Happiness is inevitable, and this is why it's inevitable. Dharma, through karma, is showing us what provides us with contentment, what provides us with happiness, which way we have to go in order to achieve happiness. The system, the fabric of reality is set up so that it teaches us how to attain happiness, how to attain contentment in the end. We just have to listen to the lessons that we're taught in response to the actions that we take in this world. There is a response from the reality around us. We just have to be able to listen and see in order to be guided towards our own happiness. And these threads that lead us towards happiness and contentment exist within. We just have to find them. Find the truest points in ourselves and follow them. Okay, now the last question, number 14, is Well, at least I think I got these numbers right. What is the greatest wonder? And Yudhistira says something interesting. Each day death strikes, but we live as if we are immortal. That is the greatest wonder. Each day we see people dying, we understand that death happens. We see that our ego, this soul has to move on and shed this body and become somebody else based on karma and the teachings that Dharma has for us in order to reach God. But despite this, we live our lives as if I'm going to be Hunter again, for instance, or I'm going to be Hunter forever. I've been guilty of this. That I live my life often as if I'm going to be this person forever, and I don't always use the chance that I have here in the proper way, in a complete way. And that's what I need to learn to do. That's what we all need to learn to do. And once we figure out how to really take advantage of the life that we have, then the spiritual path is the only option. And it's before us all the time. We just have to take it. At any rate, this has been my commentary on Peter Brook's Mahabharata, Peter Brook's representation of the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata was not created by Peter Brooks. It is the longest epic known to man, and it is Hindu, and it is wondrous and understandable from everyone's culture if we have the translation, which fortunately for this film we do, and you can buy it in book form with English translations as well. So do not forget the Mahabharata, do not forget Yudhistira, the perfect king, who would realize himself and put his people before himself, and who reached his destination. And do not forget God, who becomes our friend and guides us along the way. All the gods being a part, different functions of the one God. And us, ultimately, every individual, everything being a part of God. So never forget these seemingly small lessons, because they will help you along your way. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been interesting. If you like this video at all, hit that thumbs up down there. If you want to leave a comment, you have any interest as far as this or that subject goes, or you think I'm wrong, or you have a statement about your knowledge about the Mahabharata, feel free to shoot down in the comment section below on YouTube. That's where I'll be mainly sharing it, but I'll share it in other places. If you want to follow me on Patreon, please go to www.patreon.com/darkrealist, capital D, capital R. And follow me on Instagram at VeveMasta. And, I'm also on Facebook if you want to find me at www.facebook.com/hunter.salazar. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Stay in touch, and I will see all of you in the future.